welcome to our development proposal for Parcel 8. We are Team 38 from the University of Wisconsin. This project will otherwise be known as Fenway Yards for the rest of this presentation. Fenway Yards is located above the I-90 interstate, 25 feet elevated, adjacent to the north side of Fenway Park. Our development plan is a two-phase development approach. The first phase including a 320-key Kimpton hotel, Kimpton flagged hotel with 2 floors of conference space and a green monster-themed rooftop bar. Upon reversion of the asset, we're projecting a 430 basis point spread on stabilized ROI to reversion cap rate. The second piece of the phase 1 of our development proposal is a 16-tenant retail pedestrian-oriented plaza, seeking to incorporate local Boston retail brands and restaurants. Upon reversion of this use, we're projecting a 220 basis point spread, once again comparing stabilized ROA to cap rate there. The second phase of our development includes a 500-bed luxury Class A student housing delivery. Comparing the stabilized ROA to the cap rate for this asset, we get a 180 basis point spread.
We're expecting Boston's GDP to continue growing at a 2.5% annual clip, so we're underwriting 2.5% rent growth for our hotel. We're expecting Boston's population to continue on its historic trend of 50 bips growth annually, so we're going to be underwriting steady vacancy rates. We've seen the employment level in Boston get back to pre-pandemic levels at about a 1% CAGR, so again, we're going to be underwriting steady vacancy rates. Looking at the market, hotels are showing very strong fundamentals. Student housing and retail, while they do show some decline from previous years, they're still showing very strong fundamentals. Moving on to the entertainment linkages, as we all know, there's no shortage in Fenway. For transportation linkages, we have the Green Line station and the commuter rail station within a 5-minute walk, as well as the International Airport just a 15-minute drive away. Looking at the university linkages, we have MIT, Boston University, and Harvard Medical School very nearby. Looking at the university enrollment in the Boston area, we see a steady growth of graduate students from 2013 to 2019, and from 2020 to 2022, we see about a 10% increase year over year. So we're hoping to capture these graduate students at our student housing facility because of the limited supply in the market.
Yeah, so looking at our hotel, this will be a 220,000 square foot delivery, which will encompass 320 keys and be built in 2029. Our unit mix will have 240 single bed keys as well as 80 double bed keys. And some key amenities of the space is that rooftop bar we talked about, net zero materials in the entire space, and corporate event space both on that second floor and near the top floor. Looking at our student housing, this will be 280,000 square feet, encompassing 500 beds, and will be built in 2032. Looking at our unit mix, we'll see that we have 40 studio beds, 52 one-beds, 122 beds, and 56 three-bed units. Some key amenities of the space will be a student entrepreneurship center, a luxury gym, and of course, everyone loves their golf simulators. Looking at our retail pavilion, we'll have 112,000 square feet. This will have 17 stores, 16 on the first floor and 1 on the second floor, and this will be delivered in 2028. For our retail and restaurant, we're looking to have local Boston culture involved, so we look for local taqueria and oyster bar, masala art, and if you want to go out to the Cape, pie in the sky would be a great option there. The second floor will have a Boston historical and youth fan experience, which will capitalize on all the local Bostonian culture and teams, and each team will have an exhibit there. Looking at some amenities, of course, we have that local Boston culture mixed in that retail space, as well as an ice rink that can be converted into seating space outside of winter, and a jumbotron to be able to watch those games on game day. One thing we want to emphasize is our commitment to net zero, and this will be done through 6 avenues. First will be a LEED certification. Second will be to incorporate biodiversity across the space. Third will be to have energy-efficient HVAC systems as well as energy-efficient water systems. Fifth will be to have 3-pane windows, which both reduces that noise from the highway as well as is energy efficient. And lastly, we'll have smart lighting through LED and motion sensors. Some pedestrian access points include the Brookline Highway, Newberry on the west end, and then towards the south, we have through the Lansdowne block with that concurrent WS development. Additionally, we have a vehicle and pedestrian access on the eastern side of Newberry Street between our hotel and student housing.
So moving on to our phase development timeline, a more detailed analysis on this slide. We've allocated 1 year towards approvals, and then moving on to phase 1, we start off with our platform construction, and then a concurrent development of our retail and hotel. I want to point out here with our retail use, we're implementing a pre-leasing strategy to seek to get ahead of the market and reduce some of the risk associated with lease-up. Moving on to phase 2 is our 500-bed student housing delivery. Similar philosophy to the retail space here, implementing that pre-leasing strategy to get ahead of the market and once again reduce that lease-up risk. In terms of project stabilization, that takes us out to 2035 for a cumulative 10-year hold on the project. For our SWOT analysis, we identified the strengths of the property to be its prime location, its diverse mixed-use plans synergizing well with the other WS developments in the area. Some weaknesses we identified were construction uncertainty, given the uniqueness of the project. We plan to mitigate this through a GMP and a 10% construction contingency. And then some of the highway noise was another weakness we identified, but we plan to mitigate this through dense composite barriers and 3-panel windows, as Ethan mentioned, to mitigate some of that noise penetration from the highway. Some opportunities we identified within the project are obviously leveraging the exclusive air rights, and then also being a planned development area that opens up to potential uses, working closely with the city that may not have been otherwise available. And it also ensures that we're maintaining the overall character of the neighborhood, working closely with the city to make sure that this is something that the Fenway neighborhood wants. And then some threats we identified with the property are some adjacent incoming supply, right, potentially an extension of that platform. But we feel that this is mitigated by the lack of viable access point on adjacent parcels, right? We have that stairway coming up from Lansdowne Block. Other parcels would not have this. And then seasonality of revenues, integrating an ice rink, jumbotron, and other off-season attractions to bring more year-round attraction to our space and make it not just one that's popular on game days.
Neighborhood benefits of Fenway Yards include a pedestrian-oriented retail village, support of the supply shortfall of hotel rooms in Boston, wireless infrastructure investment allowing for faster and better cell service in high-volume areas, and the ease of chaos before and after events at Fenway Park. The economic impact of Fenway Yards will be felt across the Boston Metro, with over 3,400 new jobs added and increased revenues from tourism and retail. Fenway Yards will have a lasting impact on Bostonians, Boston-owned businesses, and tourists from all over the world. Yeah, getting into our comp set, we chose these 4 P&L comps primarily because of firstly, their distance from our parcel. Each are 2 miles from our parcel. Secondly, they're all luxury and upscale assets. And thirdly, within near close vintage to our development. Yeah, getting a little more granular now on our comps. The average RevPAR for our comps was $243. To underwrite conservatively, we're bringing that number up to our year one at 3% a year at $266. Furthermore, our occupancy for our comps is at 83% right now. To underwrite conservatively, once again, we're bringing stabilized occupancy at 80%, coming in at year 3. Our expense ratio for our comps was 45%. We're using this as a year 1 benchmark for underwriting, and are planning to meet an expense ratio of 45 to 50% throughout our whole period. Yeah, now speaking about some construction in the pipeline, I want to direct your attention to the top right box. There are currently only 100 rooms, upscale and upper mid-scale, currently under construction. We plan to take advantage of the lack of competition in the construction pipeline. However, one risk we must note is that 95% of deliveries in the past 5 years have been in the luxury to upper mid-scale class range.
Looking at the historical trend analysis with STR, we noticed 6 different trends that we wanted to recognize when underwriting. We wanted to lower the ADR in winter months. We wanted to maintain the ADR and occupancy assumptions throughout the period, and continued revenue growth since COVID. We also want to run promotions for early corporate arrivals and delayed tourist departures, as well as raising the RevPAR on weekends and increasing group and contract businesses from sports teams and airline layovers.
So now getting into more detailed financial analysis of the project, starting off with the hotel. Our market comp set resulted in an average of $292 in ADR, 83% occupancy, and RevPAR of $243. We underwrote accordingly. Obviously, we're not implementing our pre-leasing strategy with this particular use, so obviously in year 1, our occupancy is going to be a little bit lower and stabilizing at 80%. In year 3, obviously those NOI growth numbers look pretty inflated. That's a result of those occupancy bumps from years 1, 2, and 3. So 19 and 17% is reflective of that. Moving on to our student housing, we saw close to $2,200 in average rent among our comp set, a strong market occupancy rate of 97%. Once again, we underwrote accordingly. Here we are implementing that pre-leasing strategy, so we saw a high 95% occupancy in our first year, and you don't see those inflated NOI growth numbers given there's no bumps in occupancy throughout the hold period, stabilizing at 97% occupancy throughout the hold. For pro forma of our retail, we saw another strong occupancy rate of 96%, and a blended square foot, price per square foot of $52. Again, implementing that pre-leasing strategy, 90% occupancy in year one, stabilizing at 95% in year two and after. You see that 10% NOI growth from year 1 to 2, reflective of the 5% occupancy boost, and then 4% NOI growth stabilized throughout the remainder of the hold period.
Looking at our financial summary, of course, you have all three uses. However, I want to pay attention to the totals. So looking at our total cost, we have an all-in cost basis of $662 million. And with a reversion NOI of $79 million and a cap rate of a blended 6%, we get a total reversion value of $1.3 billion, which represents a value creation of $616 million. Looking at our individual pro formas, you can see in all of them, looking at the IRRs, they start in the low to mid-teens, and then at a levered basis get to the mid to high teens. And this is reflective in our total project underwriting, with a 12% unlevered IRR jumping to a 15, and equity multiple going from a 2.6x to a 3.5x once levered. Some of our risk and mitigant analysis comes in the pre-development, which is obviously that public sentiment. However, we do plan to work closely with the city to make sure that we are following the culture of the neighborhood, as well as creating 3,500 jobs, almost 3,500 jobs, and no demolition of existing structure makes us confident that we can get past this. During development, there could be some risk of cost overruns. However, we do have a GMP in place, as well as a 10% contingency underwritten into our model. Looking at operations, there could be some risk with stabilization, especially with leasing. However, we do have an aggressive pre-leasing strategy, and with strong linkages to both entertainment and transportation, we feel confident this space will get leased up quickly. And lastly, looking at our reversion, there is some risk with that low cap rate. However, we are a prime location, so we'll have many institutional as well as international buyers. And our LTV at sales is as low as 43%, so we'd feel confident in refining and holding this asset into the future and getting a nice cash out. Thank you all so much for your time. We believe this idea will be a grand slam, and we look forward to answering your questions.
Hi, my name is Yash Jabagai, and I'm joined with,
Ali Marcus.
And Sahad Singh.
and today we're presenting the extension to the Fenway Corners development, also known as Parcel A. So let's get into it. Starting with the macroeconomic view of Boston, the total GDP compound annual growth rate is 4.9% compared to the US average of 4.1%. This growth is led in the office and finance sectors, growing at 6.4% and 5.1% annually. What's unique about Boston's economy is that the education and medical sectors play a big role in this economy, where office, healthcare, and education make up around 45% of the workforce. Taking a look at Boston real estate. Regarding retail vacancy in Boston is at 3%, second lowest in all of the United States. Retail is leasing in Boston. Regarding office, 17 million square feet was delivered from 2022 to 2024, and with the tailwinds of work from home and COVID, that has reached a record of 14% in Boston. RevPAR growth is significantly outpacing the national average. We're at 6.2 in Boston and 1.8 in the rest of the United States. Before we build anything in this neighborhood, we need to understand the end customer and who's going to be consuming the product. This end customer, 60% of the population, is aged 20 to 34, a young population that makes a lot of money. 40% of people make over $100,000. What does that tell us? That tells us that they have a lot of discretionary spending on recreation and eating out. Regarding the business landscape of this area, most of the development is most of the business is between a 0.7 mile radius, but we're going to attack the 0.25 mile radius because that's where we can not be in an overcrowded space. Vacancy in the Longwood office market is only 2.1% compared to Boston, which is 14%. So it's a very ideal market for us to enter. And hospitality, 77% occupancy in luxury assets in the Boston CBD market. Doing a SWOT analysis of the site, some of the strengths. Obviously, the prime location directly above Fenway Park allows us to have strong connectivity between the Kenmore and the Lansdowne Station, and also the Fenway Corners project underneath. Some weaknesses that we have is the structural challenges of building a deck, which can create a lot of traffic flow and congestion during construction. The opportunity that we see with the site is a mixed-use development that synergizes with Fenway Corners and that offers premium views when we build up. Some threats that we face is market volatility and potential tariffs going in the near future, competition, and high cost to build in this urban landscape. Now I'm going to pass it off to Allie, where she'll talk about our development plan.
Thank you, Yash. Our proposal, Fenway Heights, is a multi-phase mixed-use development with 3 key components: a luxury hotel, a sports-centric retail destination, and a modern office tower. This blend ensures a year-round access of this space, and by integrating with the current Fenway Corners project, we find that we'll be able to create a really cohesive neighborhood experience. The first component of our development is the Grand Fenway Plaza, our luxury hotel anchor, with 357 rooms, and we are proposing that we use the flagship brand LXR Hilton. The top floor will have a really unique concept, a skybox. It'll be a fantastic restaurant that views directly into the Fenway Park. In addition, we have over 150,000 square feet of amenity space that will also have fantastic views of the city. Boston has a fantastic, robust corporate travel market, and the sports events in Fenway add tons of more access to the space as well. With a strong convention sector as well, we plan to use all of those uses in this hotel development. This upscale positioning will work really well with the high-end travelers in this market. The next component of our development is the Boston Sports District, which is our retail concept, with over 100,000 square feet of rentable retail space. This will have restaurants, pubs, sports bars, entertainment venues, and will feature game day activity and off-season crowds as well. As Yash said, this area has really high discretionary spending in dining and recreation, and this sports-centric concept will really cater to that market. The final component of our development is our modern office space, with over 300,000 square feet of highly amenitized and customizable office space. Regardless of any negative sentiments you may have heard about the office market, people are coming back to Boston for the office buildings, and we see this as a gateway market for that development. Companies like Hasbro, Lego, Dynatrace, Saskia have all moved back to Boston, and we see this as a fantastic opportunity as we believe there will be more to come. What ties this development together is synergy. Each component of our hotel works well together, but even more than that, it's really important to us that each component works well with the current Fenway Corners project. Creating that access from one side of our development to the other was really important, and I'll talk more about that to come. Taking a closer look at our specific site plan and elevation, if you look at the top photo from left to right, we have our hotel on the far left, our retail center in the middle, and our office on the far side. Another important thing to note is our street wall setback, which is on the hotel and the office building around floor 6 to create more airflow and minimize that looming aspect that can come with really tall buildings. I'll now pass it off to Sahej to discuss our access plans.
Thank you, Allie. So our access plan begins here. So we are ensuring a seamless movement for both our vehicles and pedestrians. We are developing a ramp to connect the main site to our main road here. Now, the ramp will also connect to the parking garages in both the hotel and office buildings. For our pedestrians, we have a walkway connected with Newbury Street right behind the hotel, leading the pedestrians straight to the Boston Sports District. Now, moving on to our development timeline. In Phase 1 and Phase 2, we'll be constructing a secured elevated foundation that will be and connecting the site to the main road. This will cost us around $130 million. In Phase 3, we will develop our office. This is strategically put at the rear end of the development site to minimize disruption during other processes. In Phase 4, we will complete the Boston Sports District. Now, this will cost us $66 million, and it will bring the momentum and energy that we need for this development. In Phase 5, we will complete our hotel. Our hotel will, in Phase 5, we will complete our hotel. This will cost us around $374 million, and we have strategically put this at the end of the development timeline to minimize guest disruption and give them a flawless experience to uphold our luxury standards. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Fenway Heights is not just a development, it's a community asset. With our community hub and year-round activation, we focus on strengthening our cultural connection and fueling economic growth. We believe that Fenway Heights will be the cornerstone of the Fenway neighborhood. Now, for competitive set analysis, we believe that this gives us a great representation of the market, but we don't think this develops the true market analysis for our site. We believe our site is one of a kind, and we believe that we can make a transformative impact. Now, when it comes to our occupancy trends, the luxury segment is regaining momentum to reach pre-COVID occupancy numbers nearing 80%. On the other hand, there is negative growth in occupancy in the proximity hotel sector, and it is caused by the Citizen M opening and causing 399 units. This is not a demand problem, it is a supply shock. Now, there is currently no luxury option in the Fenway area, and this allows us to come in and fill that gap with the Grand Fenway Plaza. Moving on to the bigger picture. Luxury room and total revenue growth are significantly outpacing proximity, reinforcing pricing power and spend per guest. Luxury hotel demand is surging with the 6.5% CAGR. Now, proximity hotel supply is contracting with negative 1.68% CAGR. Now I would like to pass it off to Yash.
Thank you. Given what he just said, now it's time to translate this into our underwriting. So we're starting with the base market rent for ADR at $488, which is common for luxury hotels in the Boston area. We're layering in two key premiums, the event day premium for Red Sox games and concerts at Fenway, and a location exclusivity premium, given that we're the best full-service luxury offering in the area, and the access to Kenmore stations, the great views of the park, all of that included. Our occupancy ramp-up schedule. In year one, we believe that we can reach 58% with a strong partnership with Hilton, as it will give us recognition and early booking. Year two will ramp up to 73%, and year three will stabilize at 77%, which is in line with market comps. When looking at the hotel pro forma, we believe that we can reach a 37% gross operating profit margin and a 24% EBITDA margin. We believe that 50% of our revenue will come from room revenue, and the other 50% will come from ancillary services like our food and beverage offering like the Skybox, our parking services, and other things of that thing. So in the first early couple years, we'll see a healthy ramp up, and then we'll have steady revenue growth and a little bit of margin expansion going forward. Now moving on to the office pro forma, we believe that we'll reach a 95% stabilized occupancy due to the very high occupancy numbers in the Longwood region due to the life sciences and technology companies that have been going there. We believe that we can charge above market square foot because of the highly customizable, highly amenitized space, and because of the beautiful views of Fenway Park being in the middle of the city. We believe with efficient operations, we can reach a 70% stabilized NOI margin. Regarding our retail, like I said before, retail is leasing. We're directly next to Fenway Park. We have high foot traffic. It has scored 95 as the best place to walk in Boston. So we believe that that premium is shown in the rents as well. $65, it's above market rents, and we believe with the co-tenancy of our office space, our hotel, and the 1 million square foot of multifamily that's being built in Fenway Corners right now, that we can reach a 75% stabilized NOI margin. Taking a look at our unlevered financial metrics, we have 11.32% IRR, 2.7 times equity multiple. Office space is reaching around 10% IRR with 2.3 equity multiple. The retail is reaching 11.8% IRR with a 2.8 multiple. Now it's time to talk about the levered financial metrics. And we're assuming a 50% loan to cost on all of our uses to maximize our IRR. The leverage clearly amplifies our returns. But it's safe to, I must mention that in today's economy, we are assuming very elevated debt costs at 11.3 straight line. We believe that since money is flowing out of the equity market and into the treasury market, that's putting downward pressure on SOFR, and we could see interest rates contracting in the near term, which will boost our IRR. All in all, our total project IRR is 10.74% and with a 2.8 times equity multiple. That's supported by conservative debt metrics of 15% debt yield and a 1.5 debt service coverage ratio. Given the nature of this development, we believe the most strategic exit is a disposition to the private markets. Moves like the Boston Celtics $6.1 billion acquisition shows that the appetite that private equity firms have for sports-anchored assets. This is not just a real estate play. This is a strategic sports-anchored development in the most iconic sports corridor in the country. Welcome to Fenway Heights. Thank you.
Hello
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Zach Long. I've got Colin Davis here. We're going to be talking about the Titletown Tower, a project which we've drawn much inspiration from the Battery in Atlanta and from Wrigleyville in Chicago as well.
Hi, everyone. Beautiful views today. It's great to be in front of you. Today, we're going to run through 6 of these subsections, including our projections of feasibility for Titletown Tower. So taking a look, we are offering a sustainable 725,000 square foot mixed-use development that incorporates luxury residences, top-in-class retail, and a Park Hyatt branded hotel. We project total construction costs to be around $506 million and an equity IRR of 14.1%.
When you take a look at the demographics of the market here, what's most important to take away, folks, is this is a young group of people with a high income who are looking for luxury space, and here at the Titletown Tower, we intend on giving that to them.
Taking a look at our location, we are located in a fantastic spot at Parcel 8. We are adjacent to Fenway Park, one of the most historically known sports arenas in the entire world. We are also surrounded by a brand new development, the Fenway Corners development, which promises about 2 million square feet of mostly luxury space. And lastly, we are surrounded by some fantastic academic institutions like MIT, Boston University, and more.
Now, as an air rights deal, you might be wondering, how do you get access to the site? If you're coming in as a pedestrian or you're looking to get residential access, we're going to be coming in through the south near the Lansdowne block as WS is developing. Over on the western side, you're going to have vehicular access to the valet as well as the hotel entrance, and the main garage entrance is going to be over on the eastern side.
Taking a look at the retail market, it is a fantastic market that any high-level tenant would want to be involved with. The availability and vacancy rates are absolutely low, signifying extreme demand. There is a fantastic wave of foot traffic that passes through this area every single month, and a lot of these individuals are extremely affluent, having over $100,000 in annual household expenditures, and many of them are spending almost 10% of that on food and beverage.
As we analyze our residential space, I'd like to highlight the fact that 4- to 5-star residential properties have double the vacancies to that of their 3-star counterparts. We plan to combat this disparity in vacancies through implementation of what's called biophilia, abundant greenery, as well as creating a place that people want to be, and we'll get into that with our tenant pool as well.
Similar to the retail market, hotels are doing fantastic post-COVID. They have pretty consistent occupancies of 77.5% currently, but we believe it can return to pre-COVID levels of about 80% or more. Not to mention, they have a very wealthy tourist population of 40.8 million individuals and growing, who are all coming for alternative reasons, perhaps work, perhaps leisure, perhaps even group events. Titletown Tower will offer for all.
Now, as we were selecting a brand for our hotel, we were looking for a place that would integrate the local culture into its architecture and into its design. We also very much valued luxury and sophistication in its design. This is evident in Toronto and New York's Park Hyatts as well. Now, I'd like to talk to you all about the estate. The estate is a concept that's been spearheaded by an industry tycoon, Sam Nazarian, and Tony Robbins as well. Again, this is a concept for a hotel. However, we plan to partner with the estate, pull their wellness and longevity centers, and implement it into our Park Hyatt, ultimately creating a destination centered around luxury, wellness, and longevity.
A major focal point of this project has become sustainability, incorporating things like rainwater harvesting, automatic LED lighting, and most importantly, mass timber framing. Mass timber framing allows us to cut down our framing and in-framing process during the construction period by 20 to 30%, cutting costs and the timeline. Also, we're able to incorporate the biophilic design that Zach mentioned, which our friends at Woodworks kindly explained in markets similar to Boston can raise occupancy levels and even rents. So looking at the strengths and weaknesses of this project, there are many weaknesses and threats considering the high construction costs that have to mostly be funded with equity early on, the platform I'm referring to. However, the strengths are that we are building a destination that will transform this community and bring it into the luxury forefront. It has a prime location, the best views in Boston, looking into Fenway Park. These strengths will lead to higher occupancy levels, higher rents, and better returns that will ultimately outweigh the high construction costs that were difficult to deal with in the beginning. One thing we wanted to do was not turn our back on the city of Boston. Titletown Tower is representing of the sports franchises that call Boston home. We hope to be as good as the Boston Celtics is to Boston in this development, and I feel like we can be. We're going to create hundreds of jobs, millions in tax revenues through property taxes and other hospitality-specific taxes, attracting the highest grade retail and dining tenants that will transform this into an area that people flock to. And lastly, we'll be building sustainably, which will hopefully begin a domino effect in the Boston area that leads to more sustainable building practices. Some individuals may look at this construction timeline and say that 3 years is too aggressive for a project of this nature. I may agree with you if it were not for these two reasons. First would be the mass timber framing I was referring to earlier. It can cut down the framing and in-framing process by 20 to 30%, cutting months off of schedule. Second is, we are developing this through WS Development, who has done 100 plus projects totaling over 20 million plus square feet. They are vertically integrated and have every step of the development process along the way in-house, streamlining this timeline.
Now, I'd like to highlight on our floor plan layout, floor 28 of this building is the most prime real estate in Boston you can get. It has a ballroom and a meeting space, and again, I'd like to highlight the fact that if you'd like to have a wedding, if you'd like to have a corporate mixer, if you'd like to say hello to a group of friends from 20 years ago, this is where you are going to want to do it. This is a very unique selling point for us. The view, if you can look over there and picture where Fenway Park is, you're looking out over Fenway Park, over the Charles River. This is the place you want to go for any kind of large event. Now, with our funding opportunities, we had included, because of variability in securing these options outside of key money, we did not include these into our models. We thought it was important to bring up, especially considering the fact that when you look at the criteria, every box is checked. Sustainability, economic impacts and benefits, Titletown Tower will do it all. Looking at our unit mix, I'd like to highlight in the bottom left-hand corner, this reflects 250 residential units. In our model, we have incorporated 500 residential units, and the reason being for this, the height constraints are conducive to that. The financial feasibility is increased as well when we include 500 residential units as opposed to the listed 250. Now, when we move on to our rent analysis, the first thing that sticks out to anybody that sees this is, wow, that's a large gap between comparable averages and what we are asking for. A lot of this has to do with tenant improvement costs that we've implemented. A lot of this has to do with biophilia. A lot of this has to do with sustainability. But most importantly, the destination that we are creating is the first of its kind in the area. We do believe we can garner these rents due to that justification.
So checking out the hotel occupancy and ADR trends, after the blip every single city had during COVID, it is raised back to pre-COVID levels, if not even higher for ADRs, a little bit lower for occupancies, but as mentioned earlier, we believe they will return to ideal levels.
Moving on to the financial highlights, I'd like to highlight the 14.1% equity IRR. Typically, this is unattractive to institutional capital. In an opportunistic development, you're looking for 20+%. We do believe that this project needs to be done despite that, and through alternative financing, we will find a way due to how much this is going to serve the overall community of not only Boston, but the Fenway-Kenmore district as well.
So taking a look at the residential pro forma, we're sitting at an equity IRR of about 12%, which is the weakest of all components. This is simply for one reason. We allocated 80% of the platform cost of $75 million to the residential pro forma. This is because their valuation was able to support such a large cost and still output decent IRRs.
Our retail component is the most profitable, as you can see, at an 18.1% equity IRR. However, this has room to grow. We are negotiating right now a 5% profit sharing structure with the estate based on $30 million in projected revenue. We have included $13 million in tenant improvement costs with the estate at no cost to them. We believe it's justified that we can negotiate higher rents, ultimately increasing our returns not only in the retail component, but consolidated without the whole property as well.
Taking a look at the hotel pro forma, we're sitting at an equity IRR of about 17%, which is a little bit on the shorter side of feasibility, considering that for luxury hotels in developments of those, most individuals are looking for a 20% or higher. Despite this, we still believe that with some type of green financing, maybe government subsidies, we would be able to raise these to IRRs where institutional equity would feel comfortable. So we decided to assume that we would be able to access CPACE financing in a sort of sensitivity analysis. What we identified was giving about 10% of total construction costs lended by CPACE, it ends up lowering our interest rate during the construction period from 9 to 8.1%, excuse the typo, and for operations from 7 to 6.3%, which ultimately increases projected equity returns by 4.8%. This is significant when looking to get your property or development idea lended on. In conclusion, we believe that this project is only marginally financially viable under our base scenario given the conditions that we were supposed to fit under. It may not meet most institutional equity investors' investment criteria, but despite this, we believe that the strong community benefits and sustainable building practices that we have enacted in this project will allow for us to reach some kind of government subsidy or green financing that will ultimately bolster IRRs to a point that would enhance it enough to be attractive for institutional equity investors. Thank you guys so much. We're excited to have some questions.